All right, so I am officially recording. So yeah, if you can't make one of these, or if you have to leave early, or if your internet cuts out or whatever, if you want to watch it again later, it'll be posted on the Career Karma YouTube channel. Hey, Lauren, I see you. Caprice, welcome. So what we'll probably do here in a minute is once we get started, I'm going to mute everybody. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you're working on this stuff with us, just unmute your microphone. And when you're done, mute it back in case somebody, dogs barking, kids, TVs, all that stuff, right? Because we are recording it and we want it to be watchable later too, right? So, does anybody have any questions before we start as far as what your expectations of what we're doing are, or if you were here Friday, anything that we did Friday that you have questions about? Anyone?
Okay. We all shy here.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that's all new for me, so I don't have any questions yet. Everything you say, it's new. So.
Okay. Well, so what we're going to try to do is I put the word out a few days ago. If you guys are familiar with FizzBuzz, some of you are familiar with FizzBuzz. I'm sure some of you are like, what is he talking about? So FizzBuzz is a common coding challenge you may run across in a job interview or on a coding challenge website, or a version of it. Could be FizzBuzz, could be TikTok, could be whatever they decided to call it, but the concept is usually the same. This is probably going to look a little advanced or a little crazy for some of you folks that are brand new to JavaScript, but stick with us, because we're going to show it to you. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk through it. We're going to solve it. And then we're going to talk about why we solved it or how we solved it. And what I'm very curious of, I put the word out a couple of days ago, we would be doing FizzBuzz, either on the microphone or in text. Can anybody here tell me, were you able to take a look at it already? Has anybody solved it already? Anyone familiar with it that solved it?
I did some research on it and kind of did a few searches online, and actually found some solutions and explanations for it. So okay. I do have some questions, because up to certain points I was able to follow along. And this has been my issue with JavaScript. I mean, again, this is not my first foray into the language, and there were a lot of questions I had then, and there's still some that I have now, which is why I'm here. But I would just, I would love to actually have those things explained so that I actually understand what I'm seeing, instead of just being able to regurgitate a code.
Right. Repeating something or regurgitating it and understanding are two different things. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to remember everything about everything. That's what Google's for, and that's what bookmarks and documentation and stuff are for, right? But learning the basic patterns and concepts of some of this is going to transfer even across to different languages. If you have to learn another language later, Python or Ruby or whatever, a lot of the concepts are going to be the same. What we're trying to accomplish by doing these classes each week is to get us all in a habit, right? A lot of learning is going to be a habit, habitual things, trying to code every day, trying to read something new every day. Especially if you're brand new to this, you are trying to learn an entire new language or languages. You're trying to change your whole lifestyle, change your skills, change your job, all these things. So you're going to have to immerse yourself and develop different habits. Okay. And before we get too far, Paul, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Paul is a friend of mine I know from Discord, and I asked him if he wanted to pop in and check this out. He does a lot of stuff on his spare time, like teaching and different things too. So Hopefully we'll see Paul around again. But Paul, I don't know if you just want to say hi, introduce yourself or whatever, just while I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Oh, geez. Hi, everybody. I need to tighten this. My name is Paul. I've been programming for a while now. Met up with Craig. He told me a little bit about Queer Karma and some of the stuff he was doing, and I was super pumped about it. I've taught programming. I've adjunct at colleges. I've been, you name it, kids, adults, everything. Really passionate about seeing people move into the industry. There's a lot of opportunity here. And, you know, it's awesome to see this many people all in one spot ready to tackle this tonight. So, yeah, if there's anybody has any questions, I'll jump in with my experience to share. If anybody has questions for me, you can throw them in chat, and I'll pay attention there and answer. Yeah, but glad to be here. Look forward to checking these out from time to time.
Cool. Thanks, man. Glad to have you. Appreciate you showing up. Paul lives in Erie, PA, and he was in town for a thing for work. And we actually hung out the other night. Paul got to watch me hug a homeless person, which was wonderful and scary all at the same time. We survived, though. Everything worked out. Long story, but yeah. What I'm hoping to accomplish with some of these sessions is you guys pairing up, finding your own squads and study groups. You don't have to do this just on Wednesday nights. Okay. You can practice this stuff. You can go on Code Wars. You can go on Code Signal. Oh my gosh, Algo Expert. There's so many different sites out there. Some of them are free. Some you can subscribe to and things, but these are things you're going to want to, like I said, work into your schedule of habits of practicing this stuff, because it's not only going to make you better for your just general coding, but also for interviews and things that you're going to be asked to talk about or explain or solve, like in front of a potential employer or manager or whatever, right? So FizzBuzz, again, anybody else that worked on it, solved it, did anything with it since the other night when I mentioned it? Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to take that as no. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you, this is going to be FizzBuzz that's on Code Wars. Can you see? Can you guys see my screen okay? Anybody?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So
yeah.
What we did Friday was we did a totally different coding challenge, and we just kind of looked at it, talked about it, walked through, discussed it before we tried anything, right? And one thing I found interesting about FizzBuzz was after I submitted this, it allows you to see other people's answers that they submitted. And I think I didn't count them out separately, but I had to have seen at least 7 or 8 different versions of solving this with JavaScript. Okay. So if you've worked on it before, you know it. If you have a better way to solve it, we can definitely discuss it and talk about it. It's something you're gonna learn when you're working on schoolwork or coding challenges. There's not always necessarily just one way to solve something. There may be multiple ways. Some may be more, I should say, less code, more clean code, or abbreviated things that have come out, arrow functions, things like that are going to be different. JavaScript progressively comes out with new versions or new things that are then adopted into what is typically like the standard practice or the best practices. So you may see things in a tutorial that's a few years old that is not necessarily lines up with what you're being taught in a boot camp, or maybe you figured something out. FizzBuzz is what we're going to talk about. Where this is what the coding challenge is. It's the one I picked. So who was saying earlier that they read up on FizzBuzz? Was that?
That was me.
Sherry? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to explain what you think it is, or what the basics of FizzBuzz is? I mean, the instructions are also here on the screen, but.
Well, I mean, basically, in a nutshell, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, and I'll try to put this just in my own words.
Okay.
FizzBuzz is asking you to create a code that will take you from 1 to 100, but that will also, if it returns 3 or a multiple of 3, it says fizz. If it returns 5 or a multiple of 5, it says buzz. And if the value is a multiple of 3 and 5, both of them, it would say FizzBuzz. So FizzBuzz would be 15, 3 would be fizz, 5 would be buzz, and so on and so forth as the numbers go on through 100.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of the program. What you're writing.
Yeah.
Being written.
This particular version that was put into Code Wars, they're using from 1 to n. So n could be as far as you want to go with it. A lot of times you'll see it and they'll ask you to maybe do it between 1 and like 100. That's all in how you set it up. This one here is specifically set up to where whatever numbers you plug in, when you create an array, and in that array, which would be n, whatever that's equal to, there could be 1 million numbers in there, and it'll just keep going till it iterates through the entire thing. And they kind of do this here because you'll see when we're done, just like last Friday, whoever was here Friday, it will run like, I don't know, 10 different pre-made practice arrays through it to try to trip it up, to see if you throw any errors. Like if it's got something in there that doesn't qualify as a good answer, or if you set up this function in order to cover any possibilities of numbers that are put in that array. So just for demonstration purposes, just so you know, that's where this n is coming from. You could also replace the n with your own array, but so has nobody here is actually, man, I was hoping at least a couple people would have worked this out, because I think it would have been fun to see the different versions of the different ways you could do it. We can definitely work through it and fix it, or excuse me, solve it. And then we could talk about it. And then I could show you a couple other of the answers that were put into this coding challenge. We can see after we're done, and you can see how there's different ways to figure it out. So kind of like we did last week, we were working through this and we were going kind of step by step, and we were just doing some like some pseudocode of layman's terms of how we would work this out. Does anybody want to volunteer to do that? Kalila did it last week, where we went through and she kind of just like layman's terms, just spoke it out like what you thought we should do to figure this out. Any volunteers?
You're going to have to create a loop.
I'm always a backup volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have to create a loop. And before that, we did this last week. You remember? You guys that were here last week, we were talking about the bus and the empty bus. So like the container. Anybody remember?
Kalila?
We created an empty array, right?
Yep,
Last
definitely.
time? Okay. So one of the ways we can do this is we can create an empty array, iterate through it, push everything into the empty array, and then return that empty array at the end to see the output, right? Okay. There's other ways you can do it. Let's stick with the way we did it last week, for at least for the people that were here last week, to be a little bit consistent. And again, if you know a better way to do this, there are other ways to do this, and we can talk about all that. But for right now, let's just get some notes on here to just kind of break it down what we want to do. So we want to create an empty array, right? What do we want to do after that? Anybody remember? Everybody want to guess?
I could.
Well,
unless someone else wants to go.
Yeah, well, Sherry said it
Create
a minute
the
ago.
loop. Start a loop.
Okay.
So we want to do a loop. Do a loop. What with a loop? What are we doing with it?
Are you invoking?
Well, we want to loop through. What do we want to loop through? Yeah, Gil, that little ding dong. When people enter the room, it sounds like we just won some points or something, right? Okay, so you can't see it here, and that might be part of the confusion, but when you have the function, and the function is called FizzBuzz, and then in the parentheses, n, that is our array. Whatever is equal to n, whatever list or whatever array full of numbers.
That's what you want to loop through.
We're going to loop through. In this case, it's set up to where n is going to equal 1 to whatever the numbers is valued at. The tests, when they run, they're all set differently to run different numbers through, right? It doesn't really matter. That's the point. Doesn't really matter what's in there. We're still going to create this loop, this for loop, and we're going to give it options. So every time it goes through for each index, it's going to look at it. And I guess what I was looking for is we're going to create an if else.
You mean if then
statement.
If then else.
Well,
You're going to add the else to the if then statement.
It would be if else and then else if anything, right?
Well, you would have an if, and then an else if, and then an else if, and then an else in the version that I created, because we're going to have if it's divisible by 15, we want to have FizzBuzz. Else, if it's divisible by 3, we want Fizz. Else, if it's divisible by 5, we want Buzz. There's different ways you could do it. I imagine you could probably even do it where you only did divisible by 3 is Fizz, divisible by 5 is Buzz, and then you could probably, in writing the code, you could probably concatenate Fizz and Buzz together and do like a what do you call it? Conditional. So like if it's divisible by 3 and divisible by 5, then it could equal, concatenating Fizz and Buzz together. I guess you could do it that way. But in any case, we need to run through this. So we need to look at each index for each number and decide if it fits the requirements for Fizz, for Buzz, or FizzBuzz. Right? I guess I should have talked this out to myself when I practiced it on myself instead of just doing it. I was hoping somebody else would have had a couple different versions of it we could try out, but that's fine.
Hey, Craig.
Yes.
So I just got on Career Karma like a few days ago. Anyway, yeah. I'm on Fundamentals 2 of Grasshopper, and as you're doing this, I'm hearing the language from that app in my head. Yeah. Is that what we're doing right now?
Are we doing what, Grasshopper or?
Well, there is JavaScript is the language.
Yes. So we're doing JavaScript.
Arrays and the loops and the if-then statements, the equal to statements, because we're going to need a few of those, the N3, N5, and then N3 and N15.
Yes and no. What we're going to do is what we did last week was a lot of times you're going to see I, a variable for I. I itself doesn't have any real the letter I is not a, oh my gosh, keyword. Like there's certain things like the word function or let or var. There's certain keywords in a language that you can't use. Like you can't name a, like you would never name a function. You would never name a
reserved words.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you see the letter I, for example, typically it's just common practice to use I to represent the value of the index when you're going through index. An index, for people that don't remember or don't know, in an array, each placement of a number, integer, a string, whatever it is, it starts off with 0. 0 is always the first spot in an array. Okay. 1 is always the second. Human nature is that the first thing in a line is number 1. Okay. But in programming, your first index in an array is always 0. So we want to start at 0 position, whatever's there, examine whatever's there, use this if statement to determine if it equals what we want it to, or are we, well, what are we going to do with it? And we're going to move on to the next thing in line. Okay. Wow, this is a lot harder to explain than I thought it would be. Okay. So anytime you are going through a loop, you have to give it some rules, some parameters, like so that it keeps going all the way through until it runs out. Okay. One thing you can do is use something like we did last week where we used, I think, dot length to determine how many things were in the array and when it should stop, like keep going until it stops. I'm talking about this. Maybe I should just be showing it to you. Right. So let's get back to our notes. I think I let myself get distracted. So we're going to create an empty array. We're going to make a for loop. Let's just keep this simple, right? We're going to make a for loop. And in the for loop, we want to, we're going to iterate through the array. And if the, let's just say if the index, the one we're on, if the index is divisible by 15, we know it's going to be what? FizzBuzz. Thank you, Kimmy. If index is divisible by 5, or excuse me, let's say 3, keep them in order, sort of. Fizz, and then if index is okay. I know this is a lot of, we're scribbling here, we're making our notes, but if this is what you need to do to keep track of how you're planning on working something out, you can always delete the notes later, right? Yes, Paul, there's different kind of loops. There's if loops, there's while loops. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, look up W3 Schools, look up MDN, it's Mozilla Developer Network. Bookmark those sites. Those should be sites you bookmark. You're going to go back to them all the time for multiple, even multiple languages, not just JavaScript. Any language you're working in, there should be documentation somewhere for it. I highly recommend you find it, Google it, look it up. If you're working with React, go to React's website. There's tons of documentation with React. Almost anything that I've ever worked on, there's always been some resource from the creators, basically, or a valid source that's going to give you almost everything you need, right? So, so aside from that, something else we can do, right? So think about this. If it's divisible by 15, which is the same as saying it's divisible by 3 and 5, we're getting FizzBuzz. Divisible by 3, we're saying Fizz. Divisible by 5, we're saying Buzz. What if it's not divisible by 3, 5, or 15? What are we going to do with those numbers? How about when we output this, when we return it, we're listing FizzBuzz, and then the numbers that aren't, we could just return that number. Sherry, there's different, like I said, there's different ways to do this. That's a great question. Why don't we do this? I'm going to solve this with what I came up with, and then we can look at it. And then I'm going to show you guys some other versions of other ways that other people did it. Or Paul, I don't know if you want to feel ambitious once we get to that point. If you want to, if you know of another way we could do it, or you want to talk about another way we could do it before we show some of the other examples, that's up to you. I guess what I'd like to do is anybody else that wants to attempt this before I show it to you. Does anybody want to try what they think might work before we divulge the actual answer? Anyone?
Kind of seems like your logic with what I did earlier today, because I looked at it and I was like, oh, I have to figure it out. It kind of seems like it's the same. So I don't know if you...
Well, here's part of it too. Anybody that was here on Friday, or if you watched the video, I don't think it's up on YouTube yet. Team, we're still working on that. But if you go back and watch the challenge, coding challenge we did JavaScript on Friday, a lot of these you're going to see like a similarity, right? You're going to have an array. You're going to go through it and you're going to do something. You're going to take every letter, the first letter of every word in each string in the array, and you're going to capitalize it. Or last week, the one we did, we took all the names that were 4 letters in the array, and we created a new array, and we put those names in that other array, remember? So you're going to see kind of a pattern with this, and there's a name for it, and maybe somebody knows what that is and could help me out, because I can't remember what it is right now. But this process of iterating through an array, you're not changing the original array. Okay, that's, I guess, bad practice, right? All you're doing is selecting certain things in the array, and then you're going to output to show them based on what you did to them. But you don't ever want to change what's in the original array, because let's say you were making a program where you had a list of people's names, and you wanted to run a function, and inside that function, you wanted to put them all in alphabetical order. But then you wanted to take that same array, and then you wanted to output them, I don't know, all names that start with the letter B or something. Well, you don't want to change the original array, because you might need to use it for multiple things, right? So that's why in this case, we're going to create an empty array so that we can list the things we want in the way we want in that array before we return it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Craig, are you referring to a map?
Am I friends with a Mac?
No, are you referring to a map function?
I don't know. I was gonna say I've eaten a lot of Big Macs. It's about the closest.
No, a map where you take each element of an array and then you return a new array with each element having been acted on by a given function.
I don't know. I mean, if that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So map is, JavaScript has a map function.
Oh, map.
Yeah.
I thought you said Mac. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man.
That map actually comes from the functional paradigm. But the short answer to your question is yes.
Okay. Some of the other solutions that I saw after I finished this, and I'm going to show you guys when we're finished, uses map to solve them, and that's I think this is kind of my original idea, right, was to show this to you, show you a very simple way I did it, simpler way, but then to compare that and show you some of the other methods you could use, and still come out with the same outcome, right? I guess that was my planned lesson to be learned out of tonight, was to see that there are more than one ways to do this, more conventional ways, easier ways. I'm assuming in the long run, even faster, right? As far as you don't think about it, but even the time it takes to run this and it complete, you multiply this by 10,000 different things going on, it could affect how fast a program works, right? So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just build this out, or show this what I came up with, and then we'll just talk about it, and then we could kind of discuss other ways it could have been done. Is that okay? Unless anyone has another description. And whoever was talking earlier, I didn't see on the screen whose name it was. It was asking me about mapping, or the map method, right? I thought you said Mac at first. I apologize. That's what threw me off. And that's where the Big Mac joke came from. So I'm sorry about that. Okay. So, I am going to, I'm just going to call this new array. And if you're new with JavaScript, that's when you use more than one word. This is camel case. You lowercase the first word, and any words after that, you start them with a capital letter. In Ruby, you will probably see people using snake case, where they use an underscore in between each one, but in JavaScript, it's camel case. So, for loop. So I am setting this for I index. I'm starting it at 1. When I is less than or equal to n. So that's going to start us with the first index. And as long as I is less than or equal to whatever the number is, so whatever the index point we're starting at is less or equal to, or lesser than or equal to the number we're on. And then the I++ is going to, each time it goes through, it's going to add to it, so it's going to move it to the next index. And then the new number. Start with 0. And then each time through, if that I at that index, we're going to start with 15. Because if we don't start with the 15, if we start with the 3 or the 5, by the time it gets to the end, it'll already knock out all the numbers divisible by 3 and 5, but we want to identify those earlier so that we get the FizzBuzz. And I am not explaining this. It sounded so much better in my head, folks. And the difference between when you have an if or an if else is when you have multiple different things that you're trying to accomplish in this loop. My gosh, I need to find a book that just has like the proper terminology on everything, because Lord knows when I reach for it in my skull, it doesn't come out. So I'm sorry.
it allows you to create, like, control the order of which you want to compute something. So, or like just go through logic. So your if is going to be the first thing you're testing everything through, and then your else if is going to be your next thing, you know?
Like what's still left that you can still.
Exactly.
And you have their alternative solutions, right? So if it's this, then this. If not, if it's something else, in this case, if it's 3, then this. But if it's not that either, then this, right? So it's just each time this runs through, it's taking what's left and it is deciding what we're gonna do with it. And then if it gets to the end and there's anything else still in there that doesn't apply to all the rules that we put in, it's just gonna output them as they are. And in this case, they're just numbers. What I was saying earlier, instead of, there's got to be a way you could concatenate the things that are, hey, elves. Try to put elves in my function. I'd have to mess around with it, but I'm pretty sure there's got to be a way that you could just concatenate fizz and buzz together instead of the divisible by 15. But maybe for another time. And then this one here is going to be just an else because it's whatever. There's no if about it. It's just whatever else is left, right? And this editor, by the way, is kind of goofy. Like my, if you see my tabs here, like my stuff is not lining up like where I normally would put it. But as long as it works at this point, I'm not going to worry too much about it.
Hashtag code now, format later.
For instructional purposes, we're not going to worry as much about that. Okay. Oof. Goodness. Okay. So, boy. Okay, Kimmy. Sorry, I was missing some of the notes. Yes, if you do the 15 last, because you already ran the 3s and the 5s, there won't be anything left for the 15 to hit. So you'd end up getting a bunch of fizzes and buzzes and no fizz buzzes. So by running the 15 before them, the ones that are divisible by 3 and 5, you'll pull those out. And then when the 3 and the 5 run through, they're only going to pick up and return the fizzes and the buzz. And then if you did a divisible by 3 and divisible by 5, that should be the equivalent of you doing divisible by 15. All right. So that would also work. If you guys look in the notes, what Kimmy's got there.
Yeah, I think I had done a while loop the first time I did this. And as my divisible by 15, this was how I kind of quote unquote concatenated. And I just did it with the and statement.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I was asking earlier. I imagine there's probably a way that, okay, so for it to identify things that are divisible by 3 and 5 to get the FizzBuzz, what you put in text with the 2 ampersands, right, which is saying that as long as it's divisible by 3 and divisible by 5, which 15 would be, then it would equal FizzBuzz. I was wondering if you could also, I just wonder how we could put that out in code to where we wouldn't even have to do FizzBuzz as a return, but concatenate fizz and buzz together whenever the 3 and the 5 both apply. which I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just wondering, like thinking out loud, if that's another way you could do it. So I'm going to run this and see. And it didn't work. So why didn't it work? It's a feature, not a bug, right? What did I forget? Does anybody see anything? Let me get these notes out of the way here.
Well, there's a capital I going on in your for loop logic.
Yeah, it's not a 1.
So like let lowercase I equals 1, I less than or equal to n, and then you have capital I plus
I
plus.
plus. Yeah, it's not a number 1.
I totally did that on purpose. I'm glad you guys caught that. Good job, you guys. I hid that in there on purpose. Not really. Okay.
Nice save, though. Nice save.
Should it be an I instead of a 1 plus plus? I think it should be an I because the counter is I. Yeah.
A lowercase I.
You guys are good. I tried to get you again. Man, sometimes, it's like this is recorded, so I'm totally busted. And if anybody watches this later, there's no way I'm going to save it.
But it's a good cover, though. You're doing good. You're doing really good.
I think if I had done that on purpose just to trick you, I think I could have covered a lot better, but a lot more convincing. Okay, so this passed as far as Code Wars is concerned, right? This passed. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So basically what Code Wars is doing is it had some previously made combinations of numbers and it ran them through. So it ran and my entire computer just froze up for a second. I'm sorry. That was really weird. All the screens went black. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I can.
Yeah. Yes. So, you? Yes, I can hear you fine. Sorry. I thought I fixed this problem yesterday, but apparently it's actually worse than it was. I never had the whole screen go black. So, this coding challenge built into Code Wars already ran these other samples through, and it passed whatever combination of numbers it ran through. So 10 numbers, 30 numbers, 1 number, 100 numbers, a random positive integer, 1 through 100, whatever it ran through, all passed. That's why it's green here, right? Yeah, Dave, we're going to get to that. I'm saying there's other ways to do this, but we have people that are like brand new to JavaScript, don't even have a clue what half the stuff on this screen is yet. And there's going to be better ways. There's going to be other ways to come out with the same solution, and we're gonna try them. And that's why I was asking earlier if anybody had a different solution or a solution they wanted to show or try first. Just because one of the points I was trying to get across with the entire lesson tonight was that there are more than one answer, right? There's not always just one answer to do something. Some may be newer, some may be better, some may be faster, shorter, whatever. And this little editor built into Code Wars, I promise you if I was doing this like on VS Code or something, I wouldn't have the spacing, wouldn't be all over the place. This is really weird. But as long as it works, right? So, before I show you some of these other examples, no, cool, Dave, it's cool. Trust me. I just kind of keeping you guys posted on what the plan was, right? Especially if people came in after we started and stuff like that. I can show, let me see here. Where is it? Solutions, I think. Okay, so if you ever do Code Wars, and once you have, let's see, I think once you solve one or submit it, it gives you access so you can look up other versions, right? So like this one right here, this one had upvotes for best practice and clever. Okay. So I don't know if you can see my screen very well, but you can see the differences with this. The two pipes right here is for, I believe for or, right?
Yep.
So if fizz or buzz, push fizz or buzz into the array, which is this arr.push. See the empty array here? So this is a while loop. And if you compare that to what we just did, it's got similarities, but it's also different, right? Does anybody that sees this understand, want to talk about this or explain the difference between this and this version of how they did it versus what we just finished in the challenge? Anybody? If not, it's okay. I'll show you another one.
You created variables. I see that for fizz and buzz. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you pushed it. I don't recall you pushing it in the other one.
We did push. Into the empty
dot
array.
Push. Did you dot push into the empty
yes.
array? Okay, I'm sorry that I missed that one.
No, it's okay. I just typed it in at the end because I guess some of the questions I was asking to see if anybody wanted to jump in to try any of that first wasn't really happening, so I just went ahead and just basically finished it.
Okay.
To show you finished.
But that's the first thing I see is the variables that you created. And like I put in the chat, the one I found didn't even use an array. So you can actually solve this without using an array as well. So
and that's what I was trying to say earlier. There's multiple ways of doing it. And just so you know, these aren't my answers, right? These are other people that did this same coding challenge, submitted it. And when those answers are posted, other people that review them have upvoted. So like this one here, 15 people said best practices, one said clever, right? And then if we go down here, here's another one. He used dot apply, and here's your dot map. We were talking about dot map earlier. Okay.
Not Big Macs.
Not Big Macs. No, sorry. My stomach was growling a little bit. My brain heard what it wanted to hear. And here, okay, so here is, this is concatenation here, right? So it's taking your progression divisible by 3 and crap. What is this? Paul, maybe you can answer, somebody else can answer. When you use the question mark, it's, oh crap.
Well,
ternary.
The ternary operator.
Ternary operator. Thank you. Thank you. Also, Dave and Jay. Appreciate it, guys. Which is just another way you can have multiple things going on where you. It's almost like key value pairs and things like that, where you can have like your function and then your answer all in or your option all in the same line, right? Like it gives you like the either or. I don't know how to describe that, I guess.
Well, I've actually never seen it before, so it's like interesting, like seeing
ternary operator.
Yeah, no, I've never seen it before, but like from just looking at it, it almost seems like it has, like it's a question. It's asking, if this I mod 3. If that's a 0, then you're going to return fizz.
And I didn't think of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And if it's also like mod 5, if that's a 0, if that's happening, then you're going to do buzz. Or you're just going to push in the I to the array. So,
Yep. So this is basically, I don't say the same, but very similar to what we did, except this is a lot more compact, right? It's doing the same stuff, right? It's still adding to index. And I forgot to explain earlier too, when you see that percentage sign, that's what the modular, it's basically like divisible by, right? You're not dividing, you're wanting to know if it's divisible by.
It returns the remainder.
Remainder, yeah. That's why back on our code, when we had it to originally to equal 0, which I can't show now because it's gone, but anyway, so this is definitely a lot shorter, a lot cleaner, and it does the same thing. Let's look at this one. So empty array, fizzified. That's pretty much the same. But here they're doing a variable val, I guess for value equaling an empty string. Fizzified.push val or I. Okay. Return fizzified.
I hope you don't mind, but I have a question about that very first solution that we were looking at.
Up here?
Yeah, so I was wondering, because for the solution that you gave and also for the one that I had been working on, I had to make sure that the FizzBuzz portion was at the very first part of my loop, but it looks like they were able to put it at the very end of it. Is that just because the other two are variables and not like part of the if-else statement?
Yeah, see, this is I guess this would be a good similar to what I was asking earlier, because instead of using 15 as its own in its own iteration, or looking for 15, it's basically using the right here. It's interesting because it's not specifically looking for divisible by 15. At 3 and 5.
It's so, again, not knowing what this question mark is and kind of just looking at it, it kind of just seems like if fizz is a thing and if buzz is a thing, then you're gonna put in this fizz and this buzz. And if both of them are a thing at the same time, it's just gonna automatically concatenate.
That's where I was trying to look to see what the actual logic here is that concatenates them. I mean, it's got them here with plus, right?
Yeah.
So, because this says one or the other, right? Double pipes is or, not like double ampersand would be and. So.
Yeah, but with or, like each side of the or operator can be true, you know?
That's right.
So like true or false, the if conditional is going to pass. True or true, the if conditional is going to pass.
So I kind of just Googled the question mark, and I think the syntax of it is what's on the left side of the question mark should be true to the very first string that's declared after the question mark, and then it's false with the second part, like the second string.
Yeah, for the ternary operator. Yeah, and it's like embarrassing because I've gone over them before, but I guess I've never had to actually like use one. But I could definitely see where learning that and understanding how it works, obviously in this situation, would make it a heck of a lot easier to write this. Oops, sorry. Hey, GC, I see you creeping over there, coming out of the woodwork with the chat.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. What I believe Kimmy just said, but I think that clears up.
Yeah. And I guess that's because here's the thing, and I should have preemptively reminded the people that weren't here last week this. I am just like you guys, right? I am just several months further down the path in boot camp and learning and everything else. I am not a certified JavaScript professor at the University of JavaScript, whatever. Okay. I'm still learning this every day, still working for it. And technically at boot camp right now, I'm doing Ruby. I'm not even doing JavaScript, but I need JavaScript. I need to get better at JavaScript. I need to get better at these coding challenges. And that's part of why we're doing this. This isn't, hey, let's go and have Craig teach us JavaScript. This is, we're all checking this stuff out together and learning it. Okay. Does anybody feel better about my lack of ability to go over this now? Everybody? Good.
Actually, yeah, Craig, like, I think that's the best part of this, you know, because it's a group of people trying to figure things out. And in case all of us Googling doesn't help, then we have someone like Paul to back us up.
That's kind of what I'm trying to start here is all of us doing this every week, coming together with a challenge, working it out, Googling it, doing it on your own before we do it if you can, right? If I let you know what it is ahead of time. And then talking this out, because when you have different folks, like already just in chat and on the microphone, different people adding to this, I'm confident that most people in here now have a little bit better understanding. Some of you guys are probably like, I'm out of here. You know, this, I don't know what this is. But here's the thing. This is stuff you got to learn. Okay. If you can pick up a little bit here and there, these sessions or doing these coding challenges on your own, if you're wanting to go down this road, this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to understand and iterate, you know, vocalize, which I think is one of my big hangups and that's why I'm doing this. You have to put yourself out of your comfort zone to get better at it, right? For me to sit by myself and work on coding challenges and not have to explain or talk these things out, I'm just hurting myself, right?
Yeah, and then it's not realistic in the end because, like, in the real world, you got to.
And when I go out for a job interview,
explain it. Yeah.
Go out to a job interview and I throw up a bunch of code on the screen and it works, or on a whiteboard or something, and then I can't talk about it. They're going to be like, "Yeah, man, so, you know, how are you supposed to communicate with other developers in your team when you can't even, you know, you can't even talk out what you're working on?" So, I'm going to show a couple other ones. This one here I thought was interesting because it's like crammed it on 3 lines. He's actually using slice on this one and map. Wow.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, adding one, so you progressing by one, right? I don't know what keys does. Dot keys. Slice, I think, takes one off. Doesn't dot slice take one off?
Slice with one,
okay,
and only one, I think, takes one off.
I think slice is supposed to be at the first, whatever value or
index
of your index of your array. It excludes everything after that.
Yeah, I think it depending on what you put in the what you put here after this, where what index it goes to when it slices, right? You know, this is a whole other conversation. You could obviously look up the dot method, dot slice on what, MDM or W3?
Yeah, straight off the top, I think slice, you can put in like 2 numbers. You can do like slice parentheses 1 and then whatever other number. I think if you put 1 and then the end of the index, then it takes off, it like takes that chunk of an array off, right?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't have that ending index, then since it's starting at 1, the index beginning at 0, like it'll just slice that first element off, and then you get that remaining array.
And
I think that's.
And yeah. But I think like with this one here, what they did was they used dot keys, dot slice, dot map. So they did a lot of these methods instead of, like somebody just said in chat, okay, slice method returns selected elements in an array as a new array object, okay? And then somebody else said, The ternary operator is frequently used as a shortcut for the if statement. Okay, cool. Which makes sense because when we were looking at it earlier, it was just like a this or with a question mark, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay, this is good stuff, though, guys. I mean, I know I'm fumbling around, but hey, let me be the one to embarrass myself so you guys can learn something. I don't care. These are good examples, I think, to see, because if you're still new to this, if you're still getting into it, I think it's great to see that there's already pre-made methods and pre-made things, right, in the language, that once you get to know them and you go through and you start experimenting with them, or if you're doing a tutorial or something that asks you to use them, or classroom work that asks you to use them, I think it's good. This is stuff you want to learn. This is stuff you want to delve into. Get out of your comfort zone. Figure out what these different methods do. You know, there's more than dot push and dot pop and dot or shift and all that stuff out there, right? Let's say, I know like with Flatiron, we did a web scraper and there was a certain amount of information that it pulled, right, when it scraped, and it put it into an array, but there was something in that scrape that I didn't want. It was like the last thing I didn't want to output with my list I was making. So I think I used dot slice to remove the last item in the array that it created after it scraped the website. Let me check some of these notes. So I think we're getting some nuggets dropped in the chat that I'm missing here. So give me 1 second. Jay said dot keys is for a hash. Yep. Sarah said they used a bunch of built-in stuff. That one we were just looking at, there was only like 3 lines. Paul said this looks fancy, but you typically wouldn't do that. It's too many mental hoops to jump through. Okay, fun to unpack. Okay, makes sense. And GC says there's an argument if that's considered clean code. Okay, so I think this, my goal for what I was trying to accomplish tonight by doing this and showing this, I think we achieved that goal, is to show that there's multiple ways of doing stuff. It's not always the cleanest way. It's not always the clearest way, right? That there are other things involved in JavaScript that you can use to your advantage when you're trying to get a certain outcome with something you're working on. But you could have the fanciest, whoever you think you're trying to impress by doing it a certain way, but if you can't explain it and you go into a coding interview, and just because this is the way you found it and you practice it 5 times and wrote it out the same way, if you don't understand what all that means, you're not going to be able to explain it. And it's not going to matter that it passed if they ask you to explain it, right? This one here is also different. Okay. And you can go on Code Wars and you can search for FizzBuzz and you'll find all this if you want to work on it yourself. I actually almost recommend you do. Again, everything we're doing tonight, don't feel like the only time you can work on this is just on Wednesday nights when we do this, right? If you have the time to practice this stuff on your own, you can go on Code Wars, for example. And if you get one that looks too out of your, wheelhouse, you can skip it. You can go to another one and just find some that look like you can at least try them and try them. What's going to hurt? What's worst you're going to happen? You just can't fix it. Can't solve it. So with that said, let me stop sharing my screen. We've been just over an hour. What do you guys think? Let's talk. What are you guys thinking about this? Do you wish you would have binged on Netflix tonight instead of being here? Or do you feel like you learned anything or anything that was helpful? Or are you just more confused now than when we started? What? Talk to me.
I actually like tonight. Because, usually when we're talking about code or how to break down code, usually it's someone who knows everything, right?
Oh,
been in it for no. Knows everything. They have a plan in mind, and then go down that plan, right? And it's kind of limited to the solution. Where I think it's a lot more approachable and a lot more communal when we all kind of come together and we're figuring things out. Like it led to me learning something tonight, right? Like what is this tertiary thing? What is this question mark? And we're figuring that out together. And I think that's the magic of like these sessions and kind of coming together. Like, yeah. So it makes me want to like get my
totally meant what you
to the next one.
I totally understand what you meant, but I can't help but laugh the way you.
No,
it's okay. Yeah, what fun would this be if I just knew all the answers and just explained everything? You guys would be just, part of the fun is knowing that I do something wrong and that we're like, hey, let's figure out what I did wrong. Like even the stupid typo with the capital I, which I still don't know how I managed that. And then changing the capital I to a 1. It's like you almost can't make that stuff up, right? It's like how I don't know if I could have planned on screwing the same thing up twice, 2 different ways, but it was still, you guys caught it, right? You're still training your eye to look for stuff and why stuff's not working.
Yeah, it's like practice for pair programming.
Yeah, George, I don't know how much JavaScript you've done yet. I mean, honestly, it doesn't show, but I mean, I've been screwing around with JavaScript for like a year off and on. It's just like lately with Flatiron, we've been doing Ruby and now SQL and still more Ruby. And then, Rails is coming up, and there will be a time when I have to be back on JavaScript when we do React. And JavaScript is just something that, almost everybody I talk to that's doing either prep work or a boot camp, or even developers that I talk to, they're using, JavaScript, with Angular or React or something too. So, and the more you can grasp the fundamentals of how you can make things happen, then if you end up, learning Python or learning another language, you have to find those similarities and then just see how the syntax is different and things you do have to include or don't have to include in one language to another. I don't know if anybody that knows multiple languages wants to comment on that as far as how they feel about when you use like Python versus JavaScript versus Ruby or something, the similarities that object-oriented languages have.
I've dabbled with PHP, and so there is a lot of similarities in terms of how things are used. There is like the for loops, you use for loops in PHP just like you use for loops in JavaScript. Ifelse, you use those the same way too. So there's a lot of similarities. I think it just boils down to syntax and how everything is kind of put together. Yes? Like you even said, I think in React you use an underscore here for this or whatever, which is not something that you would necessarily do in JavaScript.
Just convention in Ruby. In Ruby, you'll use an underscore snake case, which is like if you're naming a variable that's 2 or 3 words, you'll use a little underscore between them. Looks like a little snake, right? Yeah. And then camel case for JavaScript, and I think there's a couple other conventions out there that people do, but I've never run across them or had to do them.
Well, and those are just kind of the little differences, but that's what I've noticed. And I'm not well versed in any language. I've dabbled in things, and though these are the things that I've noticed that are different.
Yeah, well, convention like that, like if you run your code, the program's not going to care if it's snake case or camel case to work. I guess I was more talking about like some languages you're supposed to put a semicolon at the end of each each thing, or like Ruby, you type the word end, where JavaScript uses open and close curly brackets and things like that. There's different syntax differences that will vary. I think with Python, there's times where you can have things that you don't have to put in parentheses, but in like JavaScript, they're supposed to be in parentheses. Just things like that. But that would take practice and using different languages. But my point being is, if you're going to a boot camp and you're learning Ruby, okay, like at Flatiron, they teach Ruby for software engineering. Don't feel like every job you go looking for later has to be a Ruby job, right? It can be something else. You can learn another language. Once you are fluent with one language, you should be able to learn another one, right? Is my point. So if you keep hearing, if all your friends are talking about Python, and you're learning JavaScript, don't sweat it, right? Just learn a language for starters. Let me check chat real quick. Anusha, I joined 15 minutes ago. Refresher, a few years of not coding. Recording previous videos. Okay, so last Friday's video was recorded. It's not been uploaded to YouTube yet. Tonight's video is being recorded. It will also get uploaded to YouTube. Every week when we do these, the videos are going to be recorded and they will be on Career Karma's YouTube channel. They're going to put a certain section just for workshops. And if you miss these, you come in late, have to leave early, whatever, you should be able to find them there. CSS uses kebab case. I don't know what that is, Dave. Okay, so overall, what do you guys think? Things we can do differently. Do you think the letting you guys know what we're working on ahead of time was helpful? Does it matter? Do you want to know? Do you want a few days head start on what we're working on so you can at least look at it before we talked? Yes. Crayola says yes.
I personally like the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Support.
You know, like I may not understand the question or the problem, but it gives me a time to kind of look at it and try to understand it before we come here. So if I have any questions, I can ask.
Yeah, and just remember, especially people that are like brand new, this isn't a magic pill that you're going to take a dose every week and you're going to magically know JavaScript, you know, in a month because you've been talking to us about JavaScript. This is stuff that you need to, and this goes for everything, honestly. There's a certain amount of work that you have to put in yourself, right? Just like anything else. You can talk to other people, you can pair code, you can ask questions, you can watch tutorials, YouTube, whatever with your boot camp, but there's still going to be a matter of research and Googling and trial and error. You know, you're going to have to try stuff and it's going to fail and you're going to get errors, and you just got to learn how to troubleshoot and figure out why it didn't work. Like I ran that earlier and it was something simple, but it didn't let anything run, right? And you guys caught it really quick. The capital I thing, right? No, Dave, it's fine. There's no right or wrong anything here. This isn't a school, right? I mean, this is just a group of people learning JavaScript, and I'm presenting it by code challenges. We could do something else. I mean, we could sit here and share screen with an editor or something, and you know, pound out a bunch of make-believe arrays and variables and for loops and all kind of stuff. But I feel like there's enough of that out there, right? There's already enough stuff in school that goes over those basics. There's already enough stuff out there, YouTube videos you can watch. And when they start off with a beginner JavaScript, they're going to go through all that stuff. There's plenty of that stuff. I feel like these coding challenges are things you might actually see, right, in real world. If you're applying for Lambda, right, you go through a JavaScript prep course, and then if they accept you at that point and they give you a start date, they give you a 3 JavaScript code challenge. You have 45 minutes to finish it. So could you imagine getting FizzBuzz and 2 other coding challenges and only having 45 minutes to figure out how to make them all 3 pass? You know what I'm saying? If you're just starting out, I mean, are you ready for that? Do you think you could do three different things like this in 45 minutes? If the answer is no, then you need to be practicing this stuff. I mean, just tough love, right? Honest truth. Know what I mean? That's why I'm doing it. That's why when Timur asked me if we could do this once a week, I'm like, oh, oof. You want me to do it? Okay, sure. Okay. You know what? Sure. Let's do it. So, because I feel like I got a lot of stuff going on between school and work and different things. But if I have to be here every Wednesday to do this with you guys, then it's going to make me better, right? You're like, God, I hope so, Craig. No, I'm just kidding. So what are we doing next week, Sarah? I will find another coding challenge I stumbled across FizzBuzz. I wasn't going to do something this, I don't want to say complicated, because really when we broke it down, it wasn't that complicated, right? Complicated to explain. But maybe we'll go back for next week. I'll find something a little bit simpler. I want to give people that are brand new to this a chance to even try, right? For us to sit here and talk about it and then solve it in front of everybody. I want something that at least somebody that's only been messed with JavaScript for a couple weeks might be able to at least attempt, right? Kimmy, if you join the JavaScript Workshop squad that we created on Career Karma, I will post the next challenge or what the topic is or whatever it is there. There will also always be a link for the calendar. So you can see the calendar, you can see the session for Wednesday night. Make sure you click on it so you register, get the notification. So you get that that notification and that reminder and that Zoom link and everything, right? But if you're on Career Karma and you're on the app, join that squad. And that's kind of like our little bulletin board, right? For this whole thing. If you're not in the squad and you don't want to be in the squad, then you know what? We don't like you either. No, I'm just kidding. You can join if you want, but it's just something there for us to have a place to post it where everybody can find it, right? Function multiply A times B.
So question.
Oh no.
Is the goal to kind of find questions that are usually on boot camp prep situations or interviews and then to kind of go through them?
Yes and no. I mean, if there's if you guys, if there's a common one that people are running across, then it would probably be good for us to do it, right? But if there's, I feel like it's not a matter of knowing the answer for specific ones as much as it's for us all to learn
the process,
how to figure them all out, right? So this way, yeah, maybe we do this every week, and for 2 months you come in here every Wednesday, we do a different one. So you've gone through like 8 different coding challenges, right? Plus whatever you're doing on your own. Okay, that's 8, but there's 10,000 more out there, right? What are the odds that you're going to be able to know every one of the most common? Yeah, there's the cracking the coding interview book and different Medium articles and different articles out there where people talk about certain algorithms or coding challenges they run into on a job interview. And you might be able to practice those over and over enough to where if you run across one, it's going to be helpful. But there's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be something you might run into that if you don't understand the concepts of it, to break it down on your own and understand how to do it. And trust me, I'm still figuring this out too. Like I said, I'm only a little bit ahead of some of you guys. Some of you guys probably forgot more about JavaScript than I know, honestly.
So, okay. So it's less about the problem, more about the process. Sounds wonderful.
I think so. What do you guys think? Does that sound feasible?
Yeah.
More about learning how to learning how to figure it out ourselves instead of just regurgitating.
Yeah, and indeed, and maybe even like, so there was someone in the chat and it kind of inspired this question because they were like, I have all these like operations and dot keys and question marks in my head and I know what they do, but how to put it together is kind of like the struggle. Like looking forward to explanation about process and what to think about, and maybe even how to get out of your head, because interviews can, half the battle is just being able to focus and believing in yourself. So.
I feel like if you've been dealing with JavaScript for more than, let's just say more than, I'll be nice, even a month, okay? If you've been working on tutorials or pre-course work for a month and been doing JavaScript, and you have not gone to MDN or W3s yet, or found some site where it has a list and a description of different methods and what they do, somebody needs to tell you, or somebody didn't tell you that should have told you. Okay, the course you're doing, the instructor that's teaching you, whatever, you need to go check that out because you will find stuff on there. And just spend a little bit of time, go down the list, look at each one. You know, dot splice, dot push, dot pop, all these different ones, and just take a look and see what they do. You might run across something later and it asks you to do a certain thing and you're like, oh man, you know what? I remember there was a method that does this. And you go back and find it and then try to use it, you know? Otherwise, I mean, that's why we're all doing this, right? We have to get better at it. We have to learn how to do it. We have to learn how to talk about it, because if you're not already have a job and you're wanting to eventually get a job, these are the things that are expected. And Paul, I don't know, I haven't bugged you, but I mean, you work as an engineer, so you know more about that process. And as far as what people coming out, you know, fresh learning this stuff, as far as what they need to focus on or make sure they have a good understanding of before they progress. I mean, I don't know if you want to comment on that. What you think?
What's the question?
I was just going over, like, if they're new with JavaScript, for instance, like being on W3 or MDN, and like looking at those different methods, those are things, don't just wait till you necessarily need them. Maybe go check them out sooner, just so you have an idea what's, you know, available.
Yeah. And that's a good place to start. Also, I mean, when I was learning, it was kind of the backwards. It was, I have a problem, I want to solve this, I'm going to go search what that is. So that kind of led me to these resources. It was still using the same resources, but I was going with something in mind of, I need to iterate through this. So I have an array, they go to W3 schools, look at arrays, and which one of these functions is going to help me iterate through it. I think when you're learning, if you have some problem in mind that you're trying to solve, that can be helpful, as opposed to just going to the resources and trying to read it and not really connecting that to, well, when am I actually going to use this? So yeah, having those problems, and as has been stated tonight several times, the only way you're going to get to that point is if you're practicing this code, both in sessions like this and on your own, and seeing these types of problems, that you're going to actually make that connection. And I think from reading chat, that's some of the things that people are looking for, is how do I make that connection? I think a lot of it stems from having problems and then having intent to find a solution to connect that.
Mm-hmm. Crayola, you have your hand up in chat. Did you want to ask a question, or I didn't realize you could raise your hand? Because if you just figured that out, that's awesome. I had no idea you could do that. Maybe not. So we talked about this earlier, Paul, and we were trying. I'm guessing this is okay to ask this in front of everybody, but we were thinking about doing one of these Zoom events specifically, just like as an AMA with Paul, because some of you guys that are just starting off, or maybe you're in boot camp, or you're curious about like the day in the life of, you know, a real developer or engineer kind of thing. And Paul was nice enough to agree to do something like that. If you guys are interested, if you could kind of maybe let me know what you think. Would you guys be interested in doing something like that if we scheduled a totally separate evening just to have a little discussion, to ask him questions about like real life daily stuff in the job, or like how he got there, things?
Could be whatever you want.
Whatever.
Whatever.
What's his favorite
industry,
color? He likes puppies.
Yeah. Industry, history of stuff, solving problems, what it's like, daily stuff, anything that you're currently running up against, that maybe pointers or advice on how to get around it, problems, like literally anything. We can take I could talk about tons of things forever, but having some guidance and structure, I think it's going to be the most benefit for you guys. So I see some people.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say Rich said he'd buy us both a Big Mac too. So
Nice.
that's always fun. Food's always good.
Yeah. If you guys have some ideas, throw them in chat and I'll snapshot it. That way I can come with some topics already in mind. So just toss them in the chat. And
if you think about something later, or if you watch this recorded and you actually stuck around this long, you could message me on the Career Karma app too with questions for Paul. I can try to convey them to him maybe before this thing happens. Because I mean, you guys, you're either brand new to this or you've been doing something for a while, right? Or you're in school for it. So this is your opportunity to bridge that gap between where we are now and ask questions directly to somebody that could be potentially working somewhere you might work one day, right? Already doing the job, right? Okay, Kalela, process of getting the job, preparing for coding interview, finding your niche within the grand thing that is software engineering. Okay, that's a good start. Rich is hungry for JavaScript. We're hungry for Big Macs. It's also true. So, you guys, I guess think about it. Let us know. I mean, Paul is not like independently wealthy or retired guy. He actually works a job too. So he's, gonna carve out an hour or so of his time to do this for us one night. So be a good opportunity for those questions. If you don't know any people that are software engineers already and you're getting into this, this would be an awesome chance for you to pick his brain a little bit about, how he got where he's at. Because like I said, that's bridging the gap between where we're at and where he's at, right? There's still a journey there. And this is a great way to find out. So, okay. So what else? Anybody? Comments, questions, concerns? Anything before we go? We'll do this again next Wednesday. If you guys are interested, it'll be a different challenge. I'll try to get that posted in the squad, the JavaScript Workshop squad, whatever it ends up being. If anyone has a good coding challenge that you don't think is super difficult, that newer folks would have a chance to try, if you want to message me on the app and give me suggestions. If not, I'm going to randomly find one, probably on Code Wars again.
One random thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked today when we looked at other people's solutions and then we learned something about it and broke it down. So maybe I know the method so far has been we take a problem, then we construct it. Also suggesting maybe looking at stuff that's already constructed and then breaking that down and seeing what it does.
I'm down for whatever you guys think is the best. Because like I said, when we do one of these, when we're done, whatever, all right, Ben, have a good night. Whatever process you guys think you're going to get the most out of to learn this. Okay. So if that's doing a different coding challenge every week, if it's having a specific topic, hey, you know what? Tonight we were talking about ternaries and we were talking about .map, right? Maybe we could do a session where we have an issue, we have a problem with one of those and we break it down, right? Crap, I forgot the word again. This is, man, the when you use the double ampersands or the double pipes. Somebody help, whatever they're called.
Comparatives, I think.
What are they called?
I don't know.
I forgot. I just said it earlier. It's like
operands is coming to my mind, but I doubt
operators.
That's correct. Yeah, operators.
Tertiary.
No, ternary operators was something else. That was with the takes the place of an if else, right?
Well, I think it's an operator then, because if a tertiary is
Boolean operators, it's like a truthy falsy, right?
Right.
Oh man, I really got to get my sleeping set. My point being is maybe these are things we could itemize those to a particular night, right? And we could discuss them further and really break them down so we get a better understanding and maybe maybe if we do that, maybe we should include in each one of these classes not only discussion of something, but finding the proper terminology and the proper way to say that. Maybe this could also be something where we're all learning the vocabulary correctly, right?
Yes.
Might not be a bad idea, because I am. It's a combination of being here and like, I guess, being on the spot, and obviously I don't want to say the wrong thing, and my hesitation and all the ums and the ahs and that kind of stuff, but these are all things we need to know how to talk about and define, and know when to use them and what the best reason to use them, right? So when we need them, we can go like, oh yeah, I need this. Okay. The teacher to me says, do a lesser plan, take one topic, explain it, and maybe do a coding challenge with that topic. Sarah, is that the teacher in you or the substitute teacher in you? I'm just kidding. So the substitute teacher is like, just send them all to the principal's office and be done with it. I'm just kidding. I know Sarah, by the way. I wouldn't say that. I would only be mean to someone I know, not someone I don't know. Just making sure everybody understands. Okay, so next Wednesday, let's just decide right now. What do you guys think? All in favor of just another coding challenge, or do you guys want to pick a specific topic and next week we'll break it down and talk about it? And
recursion. So, okay, what's going on in my head? I know I'm talking a lot, but
you're okay. You're my TA. It's okay.
Okay.
Remember,
Yay.
I have promoted you.
Thank you. Especially with what Sarah just said, like, what if we like start off with something, like how this week and last week was kind of like the same almost logic situation going on, and then we build something else on top of it, and we kind of go in that direction. So like, and I know the comments that's being said is like, if someone's new and they're just beginning, being able to break that down. And I think if there's a kind of upward trajectory and maybe we get something like objects, like it can still be broken down to those
the basic level.
Yeah.
I mean, and I realize these are being recorded, right? So eventually you could get to the point where we could go into the description of each one on the YouTube channel, because they're going to put in their own like library, right? So in the description, we could put this one, we're going over FizzBuzz. This one, we're talking about this topic or that. So later you guys could always go back and be like, oh crap, where's that one? I'm working on this stuff in school. Where's that one video we did talking about whatever, right? So you can find it. So you don't go in there and there's like 25 videos and they're all called the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
So Atia, I hope I'm saying your name right. Why don't we discuss the terminology as it is applicable to the coding challenge? So that's actually probably a good idea too. So we could find a topic that we want to talk about, right? Find a coding challenge that includes that specific thing, maybe, or something where we can use that specific thing. And then when we do it, we can break it down. So then we get to talk about it. We get to define it. We get to get the terminology down. Yeah. Booleans are a common theme. Dot slice kind of got people going earlier. Man, that dot slice gets me triggered every time, Kimmy. I'm telling you. I'm just kidding. Okay.
Maybe Google on screen. Like
Google on screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're talking about the process, like since it's not just memorizing, oh, I need to know how to figure out like this problem and memorizing what's like in front of me, maybe
show the process.
Show the process of figuring it out. Like if I don't know what this question mark is, like going to MDN and things like that. So it guides people.
That's a good idea, I think. Yeah. It's going to help people learn the process of searching and finding, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. See synergy here, folks. See what we're doing?
And if I can interject, it helps to explain the logic behind what we're saying. So if we don't understand it, it takes it down into layman's terms so that we can understand it, and then use vocabulary to, when it's needed in interviews or whatever. So I think once it's broken down into simple language, it's easier to use the correct terminology.
Well, one thing I've noticed is when I talk to friends that are that have jobs or that have got to the point where, even like my friend Matt Sherman, just got hired after boot camp, after Flatiron. He's been going through training with this company. He hasn't even made it back to the original location where he's going to have the job yet. He's still been in Texas or somewhere doing training before he goes back to North Carolina. And just because he's completed boot camp and got hired and been through these interviews and different stuff, his terminology when he discusses stuff, he popped in on Friday. He was in the chat for a little bit. And even his understanding of the terminology and the definitions of stuff, just because of his repetitive training. Paul, when I was talking to Paul, like he knows how to explain things. And I think part of that's a combination of knowing it, right? So you can explain it, but also the practice of him, at work. Paul, am I wrong? I mean, when you're at work, when you have to talk to other engineers about stuff or people that you work with, there's a certain
the experience is definitely there. I think this case, I think it's kudos to you, Craig, and I know you're going to get better at this. Is I think the other half of that beyond the experience is I've been teaching for almost a decade, so being in front of people and breaking topics down and talking about the fundamentals and always coming back to that for myself has given me a little bit of an edge there as well. So it is something that the more you do it, the more experience you have just talking about this stuff and breaking it down and talking in front of people. Let's be honest, there's a component to that as well when you've got 30, 40, 50 people listening to you that sometimes your mind just goes out for that. So
proof of that.
Yeah, certainly a combination of all that makes you better. But I think in my experience overall, every piece of that makes you better in your job, because that teaching, that being a part of a group, that having to break things down and explain it makes you a better engineer in the long run when you're actually working on real world stuff.
Okay. Awesome. So I was hoping you would say something. Well, it's one of these things too, where it's like the more you're involved in this and you try to, like part of it is like I said earlier, I'm just like you guys, but then I'm sitting here trying to give people advice. So it's like, okay, if you're just like us, why are you trying to give us advice if you don't know any more than we do, right? But the time I've put into this before boot camp and the time that I've spent doing boot camp and the people I talk to, I'm gathering information for myself, obviously, right? You're always doing it for yourself, but I want to share what I don't covet like what I learn. I think there's millions of people out there that do this stuff every day for a living. And there's such a tiny percentage of people like Paul that's willing to take their free time and give back to help people like us, right? There's a lot of people that are just like, whatever, I got to get me mine, and hey, you figure it out. I had to figure it out, right? So it sounds good. I think this is still a good night. This is still all work in progress. This is only the second one of these we've done, right? I think we're gonna get better at it and streamline it a little bit more. This one went an hour and 40 minutes. So I don't expect it to be exactly an hour every time, but just for the sake of respecting y'all's time, if you dedicate knowing that, to spend an hour, doesn't mean I want to keep you guys here till midnight, right? So anything else you want to say before we go? I will post information in the squad about the topic and the challenge for next Wednesday. Hopefully within the next couple of days, I'll have it posted by the weekend. Sarah said teaching is hard. Thank you, Sarah. Because she's a teacher, she would know. Of course, virtual teaching, at least you guys can't throw stuff at me. There's no vegetables being thrown at me. Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate that. And to the TA. They're thanking Clea, my assistant. If you weren't here last week, Kalia like jumped in and like was all over that coding challenge last week, which really helped the flow of the session and stuff too. I appreciate it. Because when I look down, there's like 35 people in here. And I'm like, so does anybody want to guess this? And nobody says anything. Just want y'all to know that's scary, awkward couple seconds. That's it. If anybody's had questions, thank you so much for joining us, Paul. Appreciate it, man. Hope to see you again soon. We'll line up AMA if you still want to do that. And you're not familiar with how the Career Karma app works, but we've got different like groups. They're called squads. And when we have certain kind of events, especially the big ones, they will promote it. They will put it out there. Like they'll put out the time and how they can register and stuff. So we'll get some people in there, and I'll get with you and we'll figure out a day and time that works best for you. Otherwise, thanks everybody for their help and their contribution. If you're watching this and you weren't able to attend, I think you're going to get more out of this live if you're able to work it in your schedule, because you have a chance to ask people questions and interact too. Okay. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining. Message me on the app if you have any questions or concerns or something you think we could do differently. Okay. That's it. Good night.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone.